CW Thoughts by Howard, WB2UZE.
Tonight, I'd like to talk about DX on CW that comes over the poles. Polar DX, how to receive it and how to understand it. First, I wanted to say the main reason that I've been talking about receiving these days is that I feel the old way we used to do it when we were using receivers like this that don't have waterfalls, you get, in my opinion, a much better feel for the bands. You understand where the signals are, how they sound, and where you expect to see them. When you're looking at a waterfall, your eye usually goes to the strongest one. And because of that, you might miss quite a bit of the weaker ones, which is the DX. I got a nice email from one of the instructors, Peter, VE3DRS, this week, and he happened to be using some of the techniques I talked about at the last meeting or so. He saw in his waterfall some very strong POTA signals. He couldn't break through to them. And then after he tuned to the side and started to listen with his ear, he found some weaker signals and got through right away to them on the first calls. And he started to rack up a lot of different POTA contacts in that particular session that he was on the air, and he was very happy. So I was very pleased to hear that somebody was actually using some of the things technique-wise that we were talking about. So let's get started. So what do signals sound like, and how do you tune them, and how do you know they're coming over the poles? This happens mostly on 20 meters. It does happen on the other bands, but it's classic on 20 meters, especially in the wintertime. So if you hear a signal bouncing up and down and fluttering, that means that at least part of it is coming over the poles. Now, around 7 o'clock at night on the East Coast, we start to hear South America. Brazil will come in with this type of flutter. If you have a directional antenna, believe it or not, when you hear the flutter, you'd be better off to point your antenna north than south, because you'll probably be receiving them 2 S units stronger going long path over the pole than going on the shorter path straight down to South America. Now, what's the flutter being caused by? It's being caused by the Aurora and the fact that you're actually receiving the short path and the long path at the same time, but it's out of phase. So you're receiving 2 signals at once. Now, some people might find this hard to copy. So what do? I've talked about this before. You have to really train your brain to listen to that sound as a single sound, or you have to tell your brain to exclude one part of it. If you remember, at a meeting a few weeks ago, we played the 2-tone CW, where there was like a 700 tone and a 500 tone pitch. Many people were confused by that, but it is copyable if you kind of exclude one. Now, I have as an example something that always kind of gets people. It's the sounder. Now, why am I going to use the sounder? Because you're going to get 2 types of clicks at the same time. To me, I can hear it as 1 if I want, but to the majority of people, they're going to hear 2. So I'm going to send a CQ so you know what I'm sending. Try and just listen to this as 1 tone or 1 buzz as it is from the sounder, or exclude one part of it. So here's the CQ. Again, So if you can train your mind to do that, you'll be able to listen to these things. Now, let's give you an example of polar DX. I have a recording of this. Now, you get a lot of polar DX to Russia and Siberia. Now, many people, when they hear these fluttering signals, they're going to tune by it and they're going to miss it. But if you spend the time to enjoy listening to it, you're going to be rewarded with a very far contact. And the Russians have good ears, and they're some of the best operators on the planet. So it'd be a very rewarding QSO. So Mike, can you play that video with the polar flutter? And let's see, it's a CQ. Let's see who can copy the call sign. Okay, thank you, Mike. Did anybody copy that?
R9LY.
Very good, Ken. I knew you would get it because you were my best student in my head copy class. Did anybody else get that? I don't have the gallery. By a show of hands, Quentin, how many do you see? Quite a few?
Quite a few, looking 50% or more.
Okay, so the people who could not copy it, I was just wondering if someone would be brave enough to say why they couldn't copy it, and then we'll talk about that for a moment.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, the first part I kind of copied wrong. I got the L and the Y, and the first part seemed to be really weak signal, like not. I just couldn't pick it out.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good comment, Bill. And does anybody else have a comment of why they couldn't copy it?
I'll jump in. I got it the first time around, but the second time I got an A9DY, and I'm not sure why that happened.
Well, I'll tell you why, Bill and Jeff, this is happening, is because part of the signal is disappearing. Now, what do you do when a signal is disappearing? Now, of course, it takes training and some years of playing with signals like this, but you really have to, in your mind, imagine where the rest of the letters are. You kind of have to tell your mind at the same time what the timing is so you can kind of figure out what's missing. So it's a very cerebral thing. But how else would you be able to recreate what you don't hear? But it's there. I have to admit, Jeff and Bill, to me, that sounds beautiful. I love that fading in and out. It just sounds like music to me, like a cadence, not a problem. So how do you do anything in life? I used to say this to my kids, you know, as far as playing basketball. They all played basketball. But the ones that practiced the most were the best. And I had one kid that was, you know, a starter in 9th and 10th grade, but she didn't practice enough in 11th and 12th grade, and everybody passed her because she wasn't practicing. So the more you practice this stuff, Jeff and Bill, the more it becomes second nature. It can be done. So you shouldn't tune the dial away from challenges like this. So that's the reward. If you get your mind to be able to do this, you'll get that nice DX from Siberia, and it's very interesting to work them and to look on the map and then see where they are, and you look up the weather, and it might be 30 degrees where we are, but it's like 30 degrees below where they are, and there's snow all over the place. If you look on the internet on some of these cities, I found that fascinating even as I was growing up. So a little bit more about the Aurora, which causes these refractions when the signals go over the poles. They get bounced around up there, and that's why they flutter in and out. We were very lucky on Long Island to catch the Aurora the other week, and I just wanted to share a picture that I got from a golf course 5 minutes away from my house where it was very dark. You want to show that, Mike? So this was the first picture I took. With the naked eye, you didn't see this, but when I held up my iPhone, this was the first picture I got. And this is actually the first aurora that I've ever seen while I was on the ground. I saw one from an airplane years ago. And on the subject of aurora, there's another type of signal that you can hear bouncing off this beautiful electrical storm up there. I want to play a recording that I made back in May when we had that other tremendous aurora. We couldn't see it in New York because it was raining. I was so disappointed. I didn't think I'd get another chance. And I went on 6 meters, and I want you to hear what an aurora buzz sounds like. And the signal report they give out is 599 with the letter A. And after my 60 years of CW, I never knew that's what they did, because I never worked aurora like that since I was in college. So Mike, you want to play that recording I made? Yeah, so they don't even say 599A, it's 59A. So your tone doesn't get a number anymore, 1 through 9, it gets an A, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then he just gave his the code for the location. So that was very cool, and I'm glad I was able to experience that. So that's what I wanted to talk about, DX that comes over the pole. And just as a final wrap-up that I'd like to do here, I always like to talk about OH6 DC in Finland, who I lament gave up ham radio, and I can't get him to join the club, but I love his videos. And I always try and tell you that CW is not in the key. It's your mind to hand connection where you can use anything. And I want you to listen to what OH6 DC used here and see if you can decode this. He even has an AR. Use this CW key and fire emergency. He's probably standing up on a ladder while he's doing that. So he's got a perfect fist even using his fire alarm. So there you go. That's another example of making the mind to hand connection. And that's it for me tonight.